The child was born but couldn't sit still. 86 years later with no regret. You know that man can't sit still yet. The Great Depression couldn't get him down. He worked for his dad's store in town, collecting money in small amounts. The poor whites and blacks in their furniture accounts. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. As he'd collect, he'd talk to folks. He'd hear legends, tales, songs, and jokes. Now this fine treasure he'd record and write. He was colorblind, didn't see black and white. Writer's project for the WPA. With Zora Neale Hurston, he earned his pay. Crackers and blacks, they talk for hours. It was a barefoot history of this land of flowers.
The week that was on the 4th of November 2017, coming to you from WBIN Radio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network. We'll look back at the past week here. Many of the past week events will mature this week in the elections that go from the down ballot in cities like Atlanta, the mail-in ballots out in Seattle. In the Midwest, there are several contests there. In the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, they are electing the mayor also. And then we have other elections that are also coming up. In Boston, we have an election here. And we have two governor contests, one in the Commonwealth of Virginia and the other one in Jersey. So let's get to it. We'll start with the sport tonight. We'll hear, of course, from Uncle Carl Robe. He'll be talking about events with the downing of DJ Trump's Twitter, of all things. Anyway, to the baseball scores. We usually do these lastly. We'll do them today. To the NBA scores, I'm sorry, the World Series is over now. The Bucks were in the Motor City, Pistons 105-96. The Bulls were with the Magic, 105 Bulls to 93 over the Magic. Magic didn't have very much magic. The Pacers of Indiana were in Philadelphia. Phillies 76 is 121 to 110. The Cavaliers were at the Wizards in D.C. The Wizards evidently ran out of wizardry. The Cavaliers of Cleveland 130 to 122 for the Wizards. The Rockets were in Atlanta. Rockets 119 to 104 over the Hawks. The Suns were playing the Knickerbockers. Knicks 120 to 107 over the Suns. The Pelicans at the Mavericks in Dallas, 99 Pelicans to 94 for the Mavericks. The Hornets were in San Antonio, 108 San Antonio, 100 Hornets. The Heat were in Denver. Close contest there, Nuggets 95 to 94 over the Heat. The Raptors were in Utah 109 to 100 over the Jazz. The Celtics were at the Thunder, Celtics 101 to 95. The Nets were at the Lakers in Los Angeles, 124 to 112 Lakers. That'll do it for the sports. Now we'll have more on Major League Baseball and predictability as it was highlighted by the victorious Houston Astros. But we'll get that later. It's a little more involved, and we need to do a little additional research on the article from ESPN. That will do it there. Now on to the meat of the matter, as one would say. Here, let's see. We'll have, incidentally, a numbers man also will come up this weekend here at WBRN Radio. So we'll have many things going on here. Facing South, we usually fall back upon them. And this is by Paul Bless, I guess. Seven races to watch. The off-year elections that held in odd number years, where a presidential election a midterm elections take place, don't tend to get a lot of national attention, no doubt about that. Only 5 states, most of them in the South, conduct statewide elections on off years. Virginia and New Jersey are being in the year after the presidential contest. Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi in the year before the presidential contest. This year, however, Virginia's off-year gubernatorial election is front and center among political watchers as beleaguered Democrats look for sign of hope ahead of next year's midterm elections. In 2018, all seats are up for grabs in the House of Representatives, which the Republicans now control 227 to 192. The Democrats nationwide have a chance to gain ground in the legislature ahead of the 2020 census. Very important there. We are at ground zero as the Virginia Democratic Party Chair Susan Wetzel told the Washington Post, but off-year wins are necessarily transferred to midterm presidential victories. In 2013, for example, Democrats swept Virginia's free statewide elections only to lose the Senate a year later. For Virginia, the upcoming election couldn't be more important, as they will be deciding not only a new governor but also a lieutenant governor and attorney general, representatives in the House of Delegates. Elsewhere around the South, several major elections are holding mayoral elections. The Atlanta will cover it. Like most have runoffs in December, we are in favor of runoffs in New Orleans and Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, some states out in the Midwest and in the West have what they call ranked choice. We feel ranked choice is a racist system. Well, here are 7 key races to watch in the South. Ground zero, of course, being Virginia. Much has been written about Virginia. There you have Ralph Northam and the party act Ed Gillespie. Ed Gillespie's been around. Both candidates staved off tough challenges. Northam from populist former U.S. Representative Dad Tom Pesarello for Northam, and Gillespie, the far-right flag defender Corey Stewart. The business-friendly moderate Nathan, a former Army physician and pediatric neurologist, stands to benefit from the current Democratic Governor Terry McAuliffe, a close associate of Wild Bill Clinton's popularity in Virginia, where governors cannot run for consecutive terms. Very interesting there. So, also working in his favor is DJ Trump. Low ratings, just about 35 in the state. He lost by 6 points last year. Gillespie, despite establishing his bona fides and career as a lobbyist, embraced, that's why he's a party hack, any immigrant rhetoric of Trump's. Meanwhile, Northam is significantly outfunding Gillespie, just under $22.8 million raised as of December 30th, compared to $14.8 million for Gillespie. Polls are all over the place. Hampton University, Northam with a 4-point lead, the average. Hampton University had 8 points. The Washington Post posters unusual method have led to undesirable results in the past. Okay. Anyway, we'll see. The lieutenant governor's race there, stark ideological choice. Felix Fairfax and attorney and Republican state Senator Jill Vaught. are vying to replace Northam as the state's second highest elected officer in a race that pits progressive black Democrat against a white Republican Trump supporter. The 38-year-old former U.S. attorney and private litigator Fairfax first ran for office in 2013, but lost his bid to be the Virginia Attorney General. Despite that, Fairfax was a party outside prior to the race, with the Richmond Times-Dispatch noting in a profile that he only spoke to Governor in passing. He drew complaints that he was trying to divide the party last year after his campaign is being denied a speaker's slot at the state party convention. Deeply unfortunate there. That was Terry McCullough. The party has warmed up to Fairfax. The Democrats have called him a rising star, and he's picked up endorsements from two top Democratic senators. In June, he won a three-person primary for lieutenant governor after defeating his main competition, Sally Platt, 49 to 39. The race against Volk presents Virginia with a stark ideological choice. Fairfax is running on progressive politics, including raising the minimum wage, criminal justice reform. In addition, he's decided to take donations from Dominion Energy. That's a firm based out of Richmond, Virginia. That's the lead developer for the controversial Atlantic Coastline pipeline to run from West Virginia through Virginia to North Carolina. Volk, on the other hand, is running on a platform that calls for reduced regulations, cutting taxes. Meanwhile, her law firm has stirred controversy for its role in voting rights cases in Louisiana and North Carolina. Vogel herself, has come under criticism for making racially charged statements about Fairfax, who curiously was omitted from a canvassing flyer, a Northam canvas flyer. Volk has raised $2.6 million since last year to $2.3 million for Fairfax. But in September, Fairfax raised over twice as much as she did, $600,000 compared to $300,000. It matters or not. According to a poll, this is crisp at Newport University, Fairfax has a slim 4-point advantage over Vogel. Now, let me just make sure. Okay. That's Fairfax. All right. The Virginia Attorney General, another term for liberal. That's Mark Herning there, who faces a Republican opponent named John Adams. Herning has earned a reputation as one of the nation's most liberal attorney generals, while Adams, a government investigator and white-collar litigations attorney and U.S. naval veteran, is a social conservative. That's what he puts on his website. And elected in 2013, remember, Herning decided upon taking office he wouldn't defend the gay marriage ban, and later declined to defend the state's voter ID law. His actions have drawn ire of legislative Republicans, no doubt. While Adams maintains that he wants to keep the Attorney General's office politically free, his campaign's emphasizing social conservatism. For example, when the Oklahoma-based retail chain Hobby Lobby sued the government on religious freedom grounds over the Affordable Care Act provisions to provide free contraceptives to workers, Adams was a lawyer for 15 Republican members of Congress. And, of course, Hobby Lobby won that lawsuit. In the race, he's attacked Herning for refusing to defend the gay rights ban. That's not going to get him anywhere in Northern Virginia. Thus, the Republican Attorney General Association pumped almost $1 million, $900,000 in Adams' campaign early this year. Herning has a fundraising advantage of $2.8 million. The Virginia House of Delegates, and this is the most extensive write-up I've seen, the coming election are not only bellwethers for next year's midterm, but also exemplifies a nationwide development, but some attributions to a backlash against D.J. Trump. The unprecedented 51 Democratic women competing in primary races for the Virginia House of Delegates this year is up from 26 who filed in 2015. Of those, 31 are advancing to the general election in November. They include 26 first-time Democratic women, that's according to the Nation. Republicans currently hold a 66 to 37 advantage in the lower chamber. McCullough, predicted that Democrats would pick up at least 6 or 8 House seats, falling short of 17 they need to control it. No doubt about it. And the Virginia Senate, which elects its members every 4 years, will hold election in 2019. In New Orleans, voters go to the poll to choose a new mayor on November 18th to replace the popular mayor with term limited there, Mitch Landrieu. They will make history in choosing the first African-American woman to the post. In the October 14th primary, longtime community activist and charter school Latoya Cantrell topped the field of 18 candidates. She was followed by Judge Charbonnet, Zari Charbonnet, also Democrat with 30% of the vote. The two women will face off on the 18th of November. Cantrell is running as a populist, looking to bridge the gap between the rapid gentrification of the city. She told the Advocate there in New Orleans. Charbonnet, who served as a parish municipal judge for a decade, wants to tackle crime in the city. That's kind of interesting. She's lined up significant endorsements, including Cedric Richardson, a Democrat whose district includes New Orleans and chair of the Black Caucus. Charbonnet leads in a fundraising, $1.3 million as of the 4th of October, which is double the $618 for Cantrell. Now, let me just... Cantrell was a community activist. Oh, and I see, but the charter school, I'm not sure about this charter school situation, but she's running against Charbonnet. In Atlanta, we'll talk about that and have something from Nation One. This Mary Nordwood character, if you remember, she ran against Kareem Reed, and we got Kareem Reed over the line. She's been around for a while there. Natasha Lance Bottoms, who's an African-American. Neva will be the city's first woman of black mayor, because, however, that is by Shirley Franklin. Anyway, Atlanta now has a growing homeless population. Atlanta, incidentally, is a bourgeois city, period. Reed, in 2009, in her second try, she focused on public safety. Former Norwood, communications company executive, a lawyer and former executive director of Fulton County Recreation Authority, is Bottoms, who has been endorsed by Kareem Reed. You'll hear about that one. Michael and Armin, top fundraisers, raising, and this is, I guess, the rest of the race here. The other candidates are currently Atlanta City Council person Caesar Mitchell and former council person Kathy Woodard. Let's see, the city council member there, Mr. Hall, and Bernie Sanders aligned state representative Vincent, Fort. Quasi Hall. Let me get that right here. And but they go on and on. Reported that Norwood has raised $1.3 million, while Bottoms $1.2 million, and Mitchell and Armand, the top fundraisers, at $2 million each. in Raleigh. Now, this is one we haven't reported on. When North Carolina has been at the center of a controversy recently for far-right politics of the legislature. A freeway, officially non-partisan bracketed primary on October 10th included the mayor there, Nancy McFarland, and the political independent who is socially progressive and business-friendly came in first in a three-person race, but failed to get to 50%. Democratic attorney Charles Francis, McFarland, a retired pharmacist and business owner who is white, won the city's wealthier and white areas, while Francis, who's an African-American, won the predominantly African-American neighborhoods frustrated with rapid city growth. The third-place winner was a Republican, Paul Fitz, who got less than 15% of the vote compared to 48% for McFarland and 36% for Francis. Self-described fiscal conservative, Francis has a campaign on the growing divide between rich and poor. McFarland was instrumental in passing a tax increase to provide an additional $6 million for affordable housing. Francis has accused her of not doing enough. Well, that's a commentary right there. North Carolina law prohibits inclusionary zoning ordinance that require developers to set aside a percentage. Unfortunately, for affordable houses, Francis is running as an outsider. He's picked up the endorsement of both local Democrats and Republican parties, as well as Fitz. However, in the runoff, he lost the endorsement of the LGBTQ group. Anyway, the election shows the limits of fundraising in the locals. The top two fundraisers in the race for Raleigh City Council both lost. McFarland slightly outspent Francis in the primary, 1,067 to 163,500. Second round, Francis would have to boost turnout significantly to pick up nearly all of Fitz voters to have a chance of toppling McFarland. This is by Paul Glass, and we appreciate it. And let's go. Trump campaign advisor met with Russian officials here. Let's first do this. Is a very short one right here. Very frustrated. Trump has become the top critic of law enforcement. This is from the New York Times. Trump's become highly disappointed in office by his own account, and was discovering that he's not supposed to personally direct law enforcement decisions by the Department of Justice, the FBI, and so instead he has made himself into perhaps the most vocal critic of the American system of justice to ever occupy the office. He tweeted a joke and a laughing stock. He demanded the suspect in the New York situation be tried, all sorts of weird things. He's also promised and unpromised to fire Beauregard Sessions, who runs the Department of Justice, which has become the Department of Injustice under him. Other presidents have been criticized for political intervention, and when they spoke out about continuing criminal cases, as from Paul J. Walson, who was the White House counsel under Reagan, said his president at the time spoke out on cases of interest, including the investigation of one-time advisor Michael Diva. And nobody remembers Michael Diva. He wrote a book and went to AA. Then they cite here the presidencies of John F. Kennedy, of course. LBJ, they wiretapped Dr. King. Some of the things that set out here, the Podesta scandal, Tony Podesta, part of the head of the Podesta public relations firm. And to finish this up, Trump's own outspokenness may have helped lead to a very result he is condemning. The judges did not explain his reason on Friday, but last week he would consider the president's post comments as evidence for a lighter case. Now, this was in the case of of a good man, Sergeant Bergdahl. Anyway, Bergdahl was will be mustered out of the Army, his pay taken away, and get a dishonorable discharge, but he did not have to go to jail, so that's a victory there. Now, this Russian advisor of admitted, won't go much at him. His name is Carter Page. Shortly after the trip, he sent an email to at least one campaign aide describing the insights he had after conversations with officials in the Russian Federation. Page acknowledged this meeting with Russian officials during questioning from Adam Schiff. He's a representative from California. During another part of the testimony, Page was questioned about the trip to Budapest. In other words, Page is one of these global trotters. He's been trotting around for a very, very long time. Page criticized American foreign policy towards Russia. He was speaking at a Russian university. You can expect that. Page was wrapped up, but not charged. An FBI investigation in 2013 targeting people suspected of being Russian. Intelligence officers in New York. One of the three men was later charged with being an unregistered agent of a foreign government. That's nothing there. So anyways, back to the video, he told the audience that he met with an executive of Rosneft, that is a Russian oil company, and he said that person was a friend. So much for Carter Page. Another article here, lobbying of Frizzy begins on a tax bill. Everybody is lobbying. The lobbyists out there, some of the people that are against it, the National Home Builders, and David Camp. If you remember him, he was the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. He's from Michigan. He wrote a 2014 tax bill that laid out some of the groundwork for the current one. Camp is now a senior advisor for, guess who? Price Waterhouse Cooper, and said when lawmakers attempt to overhaul the code, you get significant pushback on just about everything. Of course, there are a lot of groups pushing back here. The Mortgage Bankers Association discussed with members of Congress over the weekend. That's David Stevens. He's the president. Realtors are running online ads. They're not happy. Stevens complained about the piling on effect, the bill's provisions on home ownership incentives, said the bill is moving really fast through the House. Every special interest is going to have concerns. He said if Congress is going to have integrity, they're going to have to listen before they make these decisions. That's the whole idea of running the thing as quickly as possible. Republicans decided to take aim at the Affordable Care Act, not wise. That would add another dimension to the battle. While I support replacing the individual mandates with an automatic enrollment that allows a consumer to opt out, it would make it more difficult to pass the tax bill. That's from Susan Collins of Maine. Another a member of Brady's committee, old Brady, will meet next Monday to begin what's called the markup. That is interesting within itself. The Koch brothers in this scheme too. They are lobbying for various things. The bill would continue to add to the deficit after 10 years, violating a procedural budget rule the Republicans are hoping to use, and that is that particular rule allows them to win by 50 plus 1, in other words, 51 votes. If they do not use that rule, they'll have to go to 60 votes, which they will not get in the Senate. So this tax foundation assumes a gross spending spurred by business tax cut largely found its way into workers' paychecks. The gains would be more evenly distributed, with middle class seeing a bigger income increase on a percentage basis. Now, Republicans here, would reduce the value of income tax cuts for individuals by $90 billion over the course of 10 years, a decade. Now, one other little thing here that's in the woodworks is called a change to the CPI. It is a technical change that immediately adopted would revisit inflation, known as chain CPI. They've been talking about this for a long time. Would change how inflation is calculated, thus slowing the speed at which tax brackets grow with inflation. As a result, Americans would more quickly find themselves in higher tax brackets, jumping from a 12% top bracket to 25, for example, as incomes increase. The chain of measure would also slow the value growth of some inflation-adjusted benefits, and such as the earned income tax credit. We already did Atlanta. Now this is a big question here between an African-American mayor. Let's see. Atlanta has had an African-American mayor since the Ford administration. Now that we remember Mayor Jackson, the late great Mayor Jackson. And this big race here is Maynard Jackson, is Kelly Bass Jackson, a former daughter-in-law there. It's a hot topic now that people are feeling responsible for making such a black mayor is making sure it's elected. The 16% turnouts won't cut it, and they had 25 in Detroit. This poll shows that the front runner to be a European named Mary Norwood. We talked about her, a junior league president from a tiny suburb of Buckhead Central, to fight for all neighborhoods, but she's really not fighting for all neighborhoods. This Mary Norwood, nasty character. She did not endorse. Let's see. Who was it she didn't endorse here? Is that large? Okay. But she did not endorse. Was it? Make sure, but I get who she didn't endorse here. Well, we've already jumped to cities here. But anyway, she did not endorse, I believe it was Ocelot, but if it wasn't Ocelot, it was a Progressive Democrat in another district over there. Two other, these are Fulton counties. The election is the only, in Detroit, I think we went over this. Coleman Young II, he's the son of of Coleman Young Jr., legendary mayor there. He's against Dagen, the first European mayor in 40 years. Their low voter turnout could cause some problems there. Desiree Carbonet is former. I think we got that on New Orleans. All right, let's see. Another report says U.S. You probably heard this before. He says a human caused climate change, contradicted by officials there in the Trump administration. 13 federal agencies unveiled an executive scientific report on Friday that says that humans are the dominant cause for global temperature rise that creates the warmest period in the history of human civilization. Over the past 115 years, global average temperatures have increased 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, leading to record-breaking weather events and temperature extremes. The report says the global long-term warming trend is unambiguous. It says, and there is no convincing alternative explanation, that anyone other than humans, the cars we drive, the power plants we operate, the forests we destroy are to blame. The report was officially released by the White House, but findings come as the Trump administration is defending climate change, indefensible position itself. We threw this up on Facebook there. The White House put out a statement Friday that seems to undercut the level of confidence the report finds. What did it say? As a climate science special report states, significant future climate change depends significantly on remaining uncertainty in sensitive Earth climate to greenhouse gas emissions. He's a fool. But anyway, and this Pruitt guy says that carbon monoxide is not a primary contribution there. Crazy, he used to be known as Texas Prayer in the Rock, asserted that science is out on what human on whether humans cause climate change. Anyway, he was crazy. Let's go to Uncle Carl Rove. We almost forgot, Uncle. We're going to need to get him here. Tweet or less, smile more. Striking thing about American politics these days. The number is the number of pace of events. Friday, the learned special counsel Robert Mueller, his first indictments into the Russian interference in the 2016 presidential campaign. On Sunday, commandos captured one of the prime suspects in Benghazi. Monday saw Donald Trump's former campaign manager and longtime associate indicted on, that's Paul Manafort, on 12 counts that included money fraud, tax fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. It also revealed that Trump foreign policy advisor and political wannabe George Dopopoulos, we got it right, pled guilty to lying to Russian representatives back in August. The following day, New York City suffered a deadly terrorist attack by an Uzbek immigrant pledged his loyalty to ISIS. On the legislative front, last-minute wrangling. Well, this would have been a good opening line for the week, but was delayed by a day. The long-awaited rollout of the tax proposal through this hectic period. Americans that were subject to a steady stream of angry presidential tweets and even more impromptu news conference that contributed to growing weakness. Many Americans desperately wanted less outrage and more progress in their politics, but the constant torment is obstructing the reality that is in important areas some progress is being made in the hectic period, as they call it. Anyway, last week, for example, the House passed a budget resolution different in important ways from the earlier approved House version. Rather than pinning the version of the House resolution back and forth, with the upper chamber, Republican representatives accepted the Senate version, setting up the reconciliation process. That was the process that the Times mentioned, but not the name. And they need the 51 votes as a key. Even most Freedom Caucus members helped move things along, apparently deciding for once not to make the perfect enemy of the good. Despite Wednesday's deadline on tax reform rollout, Republicans may be grasping that maintaining control of Congress requires actually accomplishing things. Then there's Friday, the announcement of the second consecutive quarter of 3% amortized growth after 7 years of anemic recovery. The Trump administration's decision to ease the nation's regulatory burden, combined with new energy policies and the promise of lower corporate tax, has increased confidence and contributed to a 20% jump in the Standard & Poor's index since Election Day. But the capture of Benghazi suspect and Wednesday's attack shows the president is right to say America is at war with radical Islamist terrorists and to prosecute the war rather than pull back from him. Well, that's a waste of time, a waste of money. They have been defeated in Syria, has unleashed the military against ISIS, and no, it's actually VI Putin has unleashed the military against ISIS and supports a continual American presence in Iraq and Afghanistan. Oh, it would have been better if his tweets responded to the terrorist murders in New York. He did not include an attack on Chuck Schumer. And for now, cooler heads have prevailed in the Trump team responding to Mr. Mueller's investigation. The White House lawyers handling the Russian investigation. Lawyer was correct to say nothing about recent events or any actions of the special counsel have altered the president's determination to support the special counsel, because Trump has no concerns in terms of any impact on his campaign in the White House. Well, we wonder about that. DJ Trump is very concerned. He's off on his little Asian trip, but he's glad literally to get out of the country. And he'll be gone for about, I think about 15 days or so. He'll be out of the country and away from, as they say, those of us. I'll take a quick look at the BBC. Trump embarks on a marathon Asian trip. It'll be 11 days. He'll be gone from the country. Marathon trip, as he called it. He'll be, of course, visiting Japan, the Republic of Korea, and China and Vietnam, and the nut in the Philippines. I think we reported on this. It's the longest trip to Asia by a president in 25 years. Period. He flew first to the state of Hawaii, where he visited the USS Arizona. And I'm not sure what his next stop will be. Where does he go next? He'll visit something called Camp Humphreys. That's a military complex south of Seoul in Vietnam. He'll attend the Asian Pacific Economic Corporation Summit and make a state visit to Hanoi. We'll cover his visit to Hanoi and to China. The last U.S. president to make such a marathon trip to Asia was George H.W. Bush, late in 1991 and early in 1992, which was an election year, and this, I guess, is itinerary. He arrives in Japan on Sunday, and on, I guess he'll be there 2 days. On Monday the 7th, he'll be in the Republic of Korea, meeting with Mr. Moon Jae-in, and he arrives in China to meet with President Xi on Wednesday, the 8th of November, and then he travels to Vietnam on the 10th. That'll be next Friday. And on Saturday, he travels to Hanoi to meet with the leadership there. And on the 12th, he arrives, 12th of November, that is, he arrives in the Philippines. And on the 13th, he'll attend the Asian summit in Manila and talk with the crazy there, president. So that is his trip. Let me just take one last look at the polling here. So we'll make sure that we were looking at the polling from Rasmussen has it. Anyway, here we go with some others out here. This is Roanoke College. They also have the race tied between Northam and Gillespie. The polling company has Gillespie ahead by 3 points. Rasmussen, we looked at that one. They have it also tied. So this race, folks, is going to be a turnout race, literally. That was on a Friday. Gallup presidential approval rating was at 39, and Rasmussen at 43. It's been at 43 for a very long time. And on Thursday we had Suffolk had Northam up by 4. You noticed all these 4-3. Basically the margin of error. 4+ for Northam, or 3+ for Gillespie. The race is tied up, literally. So this is basically where the polling was. And the Pew on Thursday had DJ Trump at 24. Murphy is way ahead in Jersey. And CBS had Trump at 39. Reuters at 36. This was on a Wednesday. I was looking for some more Virginia polling here. We don't. On Tuesday, the Washington Post had Northam at 39, Gillespie at 44. So it's about a 1 point advantage. I guess we knocked that out, sort of down and dirty. And let's see where else we had. Well, we had Quinnipiac, which is an outliner here. Had Northam ahead by 17. We hadn't seen any polls like that. Last week, we had the people at the University of Hampton University have Gillespie up by 8. Of Christopher Newport University has Norfolk up by 7. That was on last Friday. And Gillespie is up by 2 from the polling company. And let's see, where else we go. Wednesday, October 25th. This is when the Hampton University had Gillespie up by 8. So this is tracking it from over a week here. So what we can say is the race is laser thin at best. Here, it'll be a turnout election. Gillespie has come back from being down. What will this say? Well, we'll see. Northam in the primaries ran against a progressive, former progressive congressman, and where the progressives will play in this race with Northam and Gillespie will be very important. It will depend, obviously, on the final results of where the people end up here. In the rural Virginia, how Gillespie has to do well in rural Virginia. He has to do so in the extraburbs. And when you come in, we went over this with the people from the University of Virginia. It is their backyard. But again, and he has to have a strong turnout in those areas close to Washington, D.C. Those are the more affluent, the more educated areas, and those areas also have a lot of African Americans. So it is going to depend, one, on what the turnout is. A lower turnout would favor Gillespie-type voters, no doubt about it. And how the rural areas. The rural areas have a good turnout. It'll be very, very interesting if you, in the 2016 presidential, which is a totally different beast. Here with the bounce to Clinton ended up winning Virginia by more than Barack Obama did. But that doesn't say very much. Terry McAuliffe he had some close races there. He lost one, won one. Fully entrenched there in the government. Looking at the lieutenant governors facing south with a race. How that one turns out with two of them vying there. And the Attorney General race, Mr. Herring, who managed to pull that out, a different race there. We see possibly, at least from what the evidence we had looked at in the polling, Herring will more than likely, unless there's something, a bandwagon there, will win his contest. Now, as far as Northam is concerned, well, that is going to be on turnout. The way the public polling is going, that race could be very, very close. Another one of these 1 or 2 point races between the two. And you remember Gillespie has run statewide before when he ran for the Senate in his last race there. I believe it turned it down to a 1 or 2 point setup there. So again, that is about as close as you can go. Look at Roanoke here. Oops, wrong thing. Oh, this is the averages here, and you can't pay much attention to the real. Is 2.8 for Northam, but if you look at a lot of these polls coming out here, Christopher Newport University. Wait a minute, hold on. Had Northam up by 7, had him up by 17. Is the Washington Post had it tied at Roanoke College, Suffolk up by 4, and the polling company up by 3. So you had these interesting things here. Now this poll here has it tied with just days in the contest. Northam and Ed Gillespie tied at 47-47, and the Libertarian garners 3 points in that. The Institute for Politics and Opinion Research interviewed 781 likely voters between the 29th and November the 2nd, a margin of error of 3.5%, and which do a better job on the economy. 47% went for Ed Gillespie, 37% on healthcare, jobs 44%, immigration 44%, education 40%, taxes 47%, guns 45%. Now this is Northam on the same issues, the economy at 39%, healthcare at 49%, slightly better there, jobs at 40%, immigration at 39. Education at 46. He's the education guy. Taxes at 37 for Northam, and guns at 39. He's a former Army doctor. Analysis. Gillespie has improved his position among self-identified independents. This is from Henry Wilson, director of the Roanoke College of poll. Most of these respondents say they'll lean towards a Republican than we saw in our recent poll. They moved the results favorably towards Gillespie and Republicans. But President Trump, as we noted in the last poll, Republicans closed well in 2013, 2014. But this may be one that's following the script. And the methodology, we won't go into that one, but questions answered by the entire sample of 781 residents were subject to sampling errors of plus or minuses. 95% of it was at 3.5%. So, where the subgroup of reporting, the sample group was higher, and they were interviewed, have a home telephone or mobile number there. So there's some of the crosstabs. We won't go into that, but basically speaking, if the independents, according to this, are moving as well as the last poll, Republicans closed well, and they did in fact close well in 2013, 2014, and maybe following the same script. So they will close well, but it'll be interesting to see how well they close. And this is basically the whole thing. We'll do the polling company. We have time. This is a longer network version. This is a tracking poll. Top line. This is to November the 2nd also. 1/4, 1/4, and 1/4 is how they call themselves here. 1/4 online, 1/4 landline, 1/4, 1/2, online. Oh, okay. Different kind of poll. I'm calling on behalf of the polling company, a national outfit. Opinion company. And 18 registered to vote in Virginia. 100% of them were correct. I think we went through this before. 88% were very likely to vote in the race. The total for Ed Gillespie was 45. The total for Ralph Northam was 43, and the Libertarian Clip Higher had 2%. 30% for definitely for Gillespie, 11% were probably, and 4% leaned towards him. Ralph Northam, 33% were definitely, probably 8%, 3% leaned towards him. So this is their polls a little bit different here. And Fairfax, I think we talked to, this is for Lieutenant Governor here, Jill Vogel. This is a Republican at 43% and 40% for Justin Fairfax. Now that's a Lieutenant Governor. That's been going up and down here for a very, very long time. Now, Mark Herring, an interesting poll here. Slightly behind by 1 point on somebody called John Adams. 26% definitely for Adams. 12% probably, and 5% lean that way. 28%, for Mark Herring. And 9% probably there, and 4% leaners. Firmly undecided, do not read. 12% will not vote. 1% refusal. 3%, kind of high right here with these people. So the total Republicans in this thing, including leaners, at 42%, and Democrats 43%. Purely independents 11% there. So again, total liberals at 25%, total conservatives at 37%, October through November. Very liberal 11%, 14% somewhat liberal, moderates at 33%, conservatives at 21%, very conservative at 16%. This is a polling company. 18 to 24, 3% there. 25 to 34, 11%. 35 to 44, 15%. 20% of them were 45 to 55. And 21% were 54 to 64. And the 65%, 65 plus were 28%. They were the largest percentage here. So we look at the 55 to, so you come up with what, 49% of the people. So then you get into 20% there. So you can see where this poll was going. And very few young people, 11, so about 14% were between 18 and 25 in this poll. So we can see where it is. Nonetheless, we'll see you on the Monday Morning Quarterback. On a Monday morning, we're now covering, of course, the NBA is out there. And college football is out there. And also, college football will get the big race there. This is November. They'll be talking about national standings, who is going to which playoff deal, eventually with the bowls. They're winding that down. And our new program, which will be coming soon, all about sports, we'll talk about a number of things. Football injuries, some of the business of sport, we'll blend that in. And we'll also talk about some of these studies, such as this predictive study that the Astros did, statistical people. One of the very interesting things, to get off this a bit, but Dusty Baker, who was a former manager of Nationals, he was fired, was a baseball player, as a man, a realist, I guess you'd call him. And whereas the new manager, Mr. Martinez from Chicago, is a numbers man. Now, yes, I'm a numbers man also, but the statistics don't tell you everything. They do tell you how many base on balls, how many strikes, who strikes out against whom, etc. But it's very difficult to predict, say, a marquee pitcher like Clayton Kershaw being injured. And he was injured, and he was out this time around and back. And I would venture he's not totally well since being out. And what happened to some of the Cubs bullpen? What happened to some of the quote-unquote position players with the Cubs and with the Dodgers and with the Yankees? Some were in, some were out. But Houston seemed to pretty much be there. Peacock was pitching very well. Their closer, Mr. What was his name, Gaddis? No. Anyway, whatever his name was, he didn't perform as well. But then you had, on the other side, Kenley Jansen, who was used too much by Dave Roberts. In our opinion, he was. And some of their bullpen are there. They were rested. At least you can say that. The Dodgers were rested well. But the Astros were the kind of team that got some solid pitching. And their bullpen paid off when people like Dallas Keuchel got some home runs on him. The Dodgers did. But they closed it down. And then Houston came back with doing what Houston's done. They hit the ball. They executed. And the Dodgers had some errors they should not have had. This will do it for us. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on the Monday Morning Quarterback. And we will have a Sunday programming. We'll cover the Seattle mayoral election. And we'll wrap up some loose ends here. It'll be our Sunday program. And then, of course, we'll have the Monday Morning Quarterback. And on some of the other channels, we will cover Catalona this weekend. And we'll also do Numbers Man. I run out of voice here. Sorry about that. Good day.
City Councilwoman Keisha Lance Bottom.
And I want folks to know that I'm going to do everything I can between now and November 7th and December 5th to see that Keisha Lance Bottoms becomes my successor, that a woman becomes the 60th mayor of the city of Atlanta.
Decisions for all of us, and we can't leave that up to chance.
Bottoms released an ad yesterday featuring Reed, who is promising to make stops at 40 barbershops, nail shops, and beauty salons over the weekend as early voting for the November 7th election begins on Monday. You got 12 people in the race, Robert. You're there in Atlanta who's running. Is this big?
No, this is not big at all. I think the biggest impediment to Keisha Lance Bottoms winning is the support of Kasim Reed, who is currently supporting her in this race. Kasim Reed has done more to destroy black churches in Atlanta than any white Republican could ever do. He's currently working on trying to turn Morris Brown's campus into a movie studio. He's done more for gentrification to move black people outside the city of Atlanta. He has attacked every black man in the race, from Vincent Fort to John Eves to Kwanzaa Hall to Caesar Mitchell. So I think him going to barbershops in the hood that he has not helped in the last 8 years is not going to be what pushes Keisha Lance Bottoms over the top.
Shannon, but here's what's interesting. What you have here, though, you look at the most recent poll, the numbers have changed. She's actually increased support in the polls. Now is running right behind the white candidate, Mary Norwood. And so this, now coming on the heels of that, could change that race. And again, early voting is Monday.
You know, a lot of folks don't really pay attention, below the surface level. So on the surface, they're going to see the current endorsing who he'd like to see be the next. And that's all they're going to see. They're not going to see what he's done, what he hasn't done, memories are short, all that. They're going to see the current saying this should be the next.
Scott, and what you also have here, again, you got 12 people running. When you have that many people running, then you have, of course, Norwood, who is in double digits in a huge way. This is all about separating the pack. And at the end of the day, if you're one of the 12 other 11 candidates, your goal is to get to the runoff. Any bump of 1%, 2% actually separates you from the pack.
Yeah, I think so. Kasim Reed is a great Kappa man, and I think really been a great man.
Ain't that many of those, but go ahead.
But he is a great Kappa man. I understand the numbers are up, though. Crime is down. It's one of the most well-run cities. If you take the polling on his popularity and what he's done for the city over 8 years, I think his endorsement can make a difference. When you have multiple candidates, the bottom line is, and I've run for office before, is that it's an open seat. Then whoever's got the best ground game, whoever is best organized, is the one that's going to be successful.
Well, bottom line is, of course, yesterday we had Ernie Suggs of the Land Journal and Constitution on the show talking about the whole issue of turnout. That is something that matters. And again, I'll say it again, folks. You had, of course, when you had a race last time, you had 14% turnout. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I can't accept 14% turnout in Atlanta, 25% turnout in Birmingham, 25% turnout in the race, in the mayoral race election. We can't keep talking about Donald Trump or Republicans in the House, in the Senate, and these places, and then we're not voting in local elections. We are more impacted at what is happening in local elections. And so if there's a local election in your city, you better be registered and you better vote, because it doesn't make sense for us to have numerical power and then we don't use it. That, to me, is an abomination. And so, black folks in Atlanta, get off your butt, go register, and go vote.
Weekdays on TV One.
I will never lie to you.
Oh, my God.
Roland Martin.
He doesn't want to talk to us. He wants to ignore us.
Uncensored.
Hell no. That ain't gonna cut it, boo.
Unapologetic.
No, that is fundamentally false. You are wrong.
Unfiltered.
He wants an America where we all look alike. He ain't talking about black people.
Unrelenting.
You better go work out, because you got a fight on your hands.
News One Now with Roland Martin. Weekdays at 7 a.m. on TV One.
After school, sweeping floors and shampooing hair.
Keisha Lance Bottoms worked hard for everything she has, working her way through college and law school. On the council, Keisha reopened rec centers across Atlanta.
Because every child deserves the same opportunities mine have.
Now Keisha is running for mayor to keep Atlanta focused on the future and the next generation. Keisha Lance Bottoms, the Democrat for mayor.